Hello all and welcome to this AWS tutorial. In our tutorial today, I will provide a brief overview on Amazon Q. These are some reference URLs that I have mentioned over here. I would certainly recommend that you review through these URLs to get additional information about this particular service. I will also have these URLs mentioned in the description of this video. So what is Amazon Q? Amazon Q is a fully managed, generative AI powered enterprise chat assistant built on Amazon Bedrock. So, this is the simplest definition that you can give someone if anyone asks you, what is Amazon Q? Remember some of the keywords over here. First and foremost, it's a fully managed service. That means you don't have to do anything much. It uses Gen AI behind the scenes. And most importantly, Amazon Q is a chat assistant. So this is what this service is all about. It has 40 plus built-in connectors that you can use to connect to your company's data. Right? So that data could be in form of data repositories, could be information systems, depends on what kind of different data sources that you have. Generally, it's a lot of document repositories, which kind of act as your data sources. Remember, this is a chat assistant. That means if you ask a question, then it will provide a response to you. I assume that most of the people watching this particular video know what a chat assistant is all about, right? We've all interacted with some kind of an AI powered chat assistant at some point in time. So it is a chat assistant and it provides you detailed answers for the questions that you ask. All these answers or responses are tailored in nature. And of course, it's in a conversational manner. That means you ask a question and it provides a response to you. Most importantly, the information that it provides as part of the response is totally based as per the user's authorization. That means for a specific question, let's say, it might gather a lot of information which is relevant in terms of the response. But remember, it tailors the response. So when it tailors the response, it will ensure whether you are authorized for this particular piece of information or not. If you are not authorized for that information will not be included as part of the response that is given to you. So any response that you get, you will only see that information in that response that you are authorized to see. So it takes care of the authorization behind the scenes. It integrates with services like Canva, S3, SharePoint, and Salesforce. In the preview version, it only supports 50 end users. Most importantly, it stores the conversation history for 30 days and it also maintains the conversational context after the conversation ends. And since it maintains the conversational context, you can resume the conversation from wherever you left it within this 30-day period. Remember that Amazon Q is in a preview release right now and it is subject to change. So depending upon what changes come in the future, I will try to create a Delta tutorial to cover the changes. Now let us understand some of the key concepts of Amazon Q. First is a document. I believe all of you know what a document is. For Amazon Q, document is a unit of data. And these are different types of documents that it supports. It supports both structured and unstructured text. So document is the unit of data for Amazon Q. Of course, if you have a document, you will have a document repository. And the document repository is the data source. In a document, let's say if you have a Word document, you have a table of contents, you have an index over there. Similarly, since it scans through or goes through so many documents, it needs to have an index of all the different documents that are present, right? So index is nothing else but a corpus of documents. So it has an index. Now, since it has so many documents to go through, it requires different index units. And for each unit, it corresponds to 20,000 documents. That means, hey, this one particular index unit, you are going to go and look at these 20,000 documents. Next index unit, you're going to go and look at this next 20,000 documents. Similarly, you can have a maximum of 50 units. That is 50 into 20,000. This is the maximum number of documents possibly that it can scan right now, because you can have max of 50 units. Data source connector. Of course, if you have a data source, you will have a data source connector, and this can connect to different data sources, integrate and synchronize data from multiple repositories. And we looked at all the data source connectors. Remember, in the overview, we just visited and we saw that there are 40 plus built-in connectors, and it also integrates with services like Canva, S3, SharePoint, if you have a document repository over here, or Salesforce. Application. So whenever you work with Amazon Q, you will have to create an application. Application is more or less like this logical container that holds everything together. That, hey, these are my data sources. These are the various sources that you are going to connect. This is the various sources you are going to scan, etc. This is the authorization mechanism. Everything that puts it together. Again, along with that, you will also need a chat assistant. That means you need an interface. And that is what this web experience is all about. It is part of the application again, right? It's a chat interface for the end users that you can create who are going to use your Amazon Q application. So there's an application and it has a front end, and that front end is basically the web experience wherein the user can go and type their question and ask for whatever queries that they want. And of course, a tailored or a curated response as per their authorization is given back to them. So hopefully these concepts are clear. Now, let's dive a little bit deeper into the AI and the ML world. First, and the most important one over here is RAG. Now, understand what RAG is, right? And you will hear this particular acronym very, very frequently going forward. RAG or RAGs. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation, right? So you'll typically, nobody uses a very heavy term like that, like retrieval augmented generation. Essentially, you will hear the word RAG. But RAG is not the piece of RAG that you have at home. It basically means in the AI context. It is basically a natural language processing technique. That's an NLP technique that is conditioned on a specific set of documents that are retrieved from a data set. Now, Amazon Q has a built-in RAG system. You don't have to worry about building this. It's already there. And this particular RAG model that is created for Amazon Q has two components. One is the retrieval component, right? That retrieves the relevant documents for your query. And second, remember, it has to also give you a response. It has a generational component that takes your query, takes the retrieved documents, and then generates an answer or a response using a large language model. So this is what a RAG is all about. Now, again, we spoke about another term in this particular section, large language model, or LLM, another acronym for you to remember. Large language model, again, is a machine learning model that is tuned or trained to a large corpus of documents or a large index of documents using billions and billions of different parameters. So it basically, behind the scenes, you can say that Amazon Q uses RAG. RAG has retrieval component and a generational component, and generational component uses LLM, large language model, essentially to generate and curate its response before giving it to the user. Retrieval component essentially retrieves the documents for the query. Of course, that is as per the authorization of the user who is asking that particular query. So hopefully these two concepts are clear. Retriever, we already spoke about in the retrieval component that it pulls the data from the index in real time during a conversation. Over here, lastly, you have guardrails and chat controls. So in Amazon Q, it basically lets you define some global controls and topic level controls for your particular application. So let's say if you want your users to stick to a specific set of topics and you want to ensure that your users ask a specific set of questions and do not digress from the topic or ask some weird questions or anything of that sort, you want to kind of have some kind of, let's say, governance. You can use these guardrails and chat controls. So this particular feature is again already inbuilt. Remember, there's a fully managed service. So everything is already available to you. All that you need to do is configure these controls. Finally, you have some plugins. So we talked about the connectors, etc. And again, you can interact with several other third-party services like Jira, Salesforce. We initially remember in the overview we saw SharePoint, S3, and a whole lot of others. There are 40 plus connectors. You can go and explore the entire set whenever you have some time. Finally, we have the foundational model. Again, if you're coming from the ML world, you know that foundation model is a broad functional based machine and learning model that is again trained on a large corpus or an index of different documents using again multiple or billions of parameters. And finally, what you need to understand is hallucination. So, no, you are not in a psychology class, but hallucination is in context of machine learning. So, what happens is that typically, let's say when you create an AI application or you create a machine learning model, one of the things that we have seen frequently, especially in the past, now it's probably reduced, is that the responses that it gives out is as per its training data. Right? So you use some data to train your model. So anytime you ask a question, let's say you ask any question, the response that you will get will not be 100% accurate because it's responding as per its behavior and using the data from its training data. So what Amazon Q does is that it minimizes this hallucinations. And again, it is an inbuilt feature. You will probably not even notice it. It's trained pretty well. But Amazon Q essentially reduces hallucinations or minimizes hallucinations by ensuring that whatever response that it generates, of course, using the RAG behind the scene, is using your enterprise data. So the training data that was used to develop the model behind the scenes, it does not interfere in the response that is given now. It uses your enterprise data to generate the response, thereby reducing the chances of hallucinations. Of course, it cannot eliminate 100%, but it is significantly minimized. You will, once you start interacting with Amazon Q, you will see the difference. Now, the $1 million question: how does this particular service work? So it's very simple, it's a chat assistant, so there's not much of rocket science over here, right? From a user perspective, and it's fully managed. So most of the complexity is encapsulated for you. So let's look at this. You have an end user that gives you a query using the web experience, right? That's part of your overall application. Remember, you have the RAG system behind the scene that does all the magic. So RAG has two components, retrieval and the generational component. So retriever basically looks at your query, looks at your the configuration, looks at your authorization, right? And then selects and retrieves document, right? Again, to repeat myself, it is as per your authorization and access control. So once the retriever has done its magic, then the generational component comes into the picture and that generates the response to the query. Of course, as per the authorization and access control, it has already got the required data from your retriever. Remember, generational component behind the scenes uses LLM, right? And it generates or curates a tailored response for your question. And once that response is generated, it is returned to the user. And behind the scenes, Amazon Q assigns a unique message ID for every answer that it sends out. That is purely for tracking purposes. So hopefully this is clear, right? So again, from if I have to draw a picture over here, let's say this is your end user, right? And this is your web experience, which is part of your app. So you send your query, right? So this query is sent to your retriever. Retriever will then go and look for access control / authorization, then go and retrieve documents, then take all these documents, give it to the generational component. Generational component over here is going to use the large language model, curate the response, right? Look at all the different settings, again, your authorization, everything else, ensure that the hallucination has been minimized, and then send this response back and eventually return the response to the user. And this is RAG. So if I have to draw something, it will be something like this. So hopefully this is clear and you've understood how Amazon Q works. Benefits. I think benefits by now should be, self-evident. Of course, it's a chat assistant, so it gives you your comprehensive answers. Again, as per your authorization, it's simple to deploy and manage, is anyways fully managed. Configurable, customizable. So all of these are the different benefits. Now let's look at the pricing. Again, this is the pricing right now when I'm recording this video, but whenever you plan to use this service, please look at the latest and the greatest pricing because it keeps on changing. So this is Amazon Q pricing, and these are the two plans. You can see Amazon Q for business, right? So this is for business users. It is $20 per month, and you have Amazon Q Builder, which is $25 per month. This is typically for developers. And of course, this pricing is per user. And you can scroll down, look at the different features that it comes along. And rest of the other features are mentioned right here at the bottom. Right. So you can go and explore this, but essentially you're talking anywhere between $20 to $25 per month per user. Now, if someone wants to interact with Amazon Q, what is the easiest way to do that? If you just want to get a feeling of what this service is all about. So if you go to your console home, right, over here on the right-hand corner where my mouse is, if you can see my mouse, I'm kind of circling it, and that's where you can see the Amazon Q icon. Let me zoom in a little, right? So right here, you see, this is the Amazon Q icon where my mouse is right now. So if you click on this particular icon where my mouse is, right, let me zoom out. If you click on this icon, that's where you will see Amazon Q in preview, right? Now over here, you can ask any questions. For example, let me ask how many S3 buckets can I create? Now this will go and look at my authorization, my account, the documentation and everything else before it curates and gives me a response. So this is the response that it is given. It's saying that there's no specific limit for the S3 buckets, right? And at some point in time, you can, create as many buckets as you like. But overall, I think it should have given that, hey, remember what is missing over here, that I am able to create about 100 buckets also that is missing in this particular response. So let me try and see how many S3 buckets can I create per AWS account. Okay, now just like how you have chat GPT, etc., try and answer the question and ask the question in the way that it can understand. Hopefully this gives us a better response. And I wanted to see again, there is no limit, but still there is 100 buckets or so, the service quota. So now it's telling me to look at the service quota, etc. Up to 10 directory buckets per each account. For general purpose buckets, there are no limits, but you have to still go and look at the quota. So I guess for my account, there are going to be some service quotas that I will have to go and check. Now let us ask which is the faster storage S3 class. Let's see if I can ask the question like this. I purposely did not mention low latency or anything. I want to see if it can understand if I type a question like that, like which is the fastest storage S3 class or something like that. I think it understood my question and the response is correct. It is S3 Express 1 zone. So it understood that I'm looking for a storage class which has minimal or lowest latency, right? And then you can pretty much ask anything else. Like, let's say, what if I ask which cloud service provider is the best? Let's see if it can answer this question. No. So I was just messing around with it, but I think I confused Amazon Q. So don't ask any such questions like that. Let's see if you tell a clear chat. Again, it did not ask that. Any which ways. I was just messing around with it just to show you how this particular service works. I will be creating a hands-on lab also around this, but do play around with it. See what all it has to say. When it gives you a response, it gives you a very concise, tailored response, right? It also gives the sources from where it got the different, the different parts of your response. It's also asking you for a feedback. Was the response correct? Right? And for whatsoever reason, if you need to copy the response, you can also copy the response to the clipboard. So hopefully this overview was helpful. Do play around with Amazon Q. It's really fun. I've asked all kind of questions to this particular service in all different forms. You twist the question, ask the question directly, right? You can ask anything, whatever you like. It can also help basically to improve your AWS knowledge, right? Because remember that it can give you some suggestions and recommend services that you've probably not even thought of. Because that's something that I have experienced in the last few days, depending, of course, on the type of question you ask. But hey, just ask some questions in layman terms and then see whether it can translate that for you in the right manner and get you an accurate response. So that's it from me today, guys. Thank you so much. And I will see you in some other video. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.